So, Randy, Chris, what would you say are some of the most or the single most overlooked aspects of using industry-specific software? I'm thinking about things like reporting, payments. What might be overlooked or underappreciated or less well known than it ought to be?
I'm going to take that in a different direction. You're suggesting it might be features that are overlooked, and what I would suggest is that the acknowledgement that the software was designed to do exactly what you do as a system integrator, and mostly all of what you do as a system integrator. The most important thing is to take it on, like swallow it whole, right? And to take on the entire product and the entire feature set, because it's designed to work as one entity. And when you pull out different functions and say, I'm going to have this software do this, and I'm going to have this software do this, then you got this stream of data that's flowing from the the industry specific or the all-in-one solution that's no longer being used as a all-in-one solution. This data needs to get from here to here, and then from here back down to the industry specific, and then into this other tool, and back and forth. And it's just the mental work that goes into, as Chris just alluded to, of moving data between pieces of software is massive. So it's not any individual feature that's overlooked. It's not taking it on fully and making the commitment to it, even if it doesn't match your process exactly, that I think is the biggest oversight and causes the most problems.
So the idea is essentially that you shouldn't look at a software tool as a hodgepodge of features and benefits, but rather, as you say, swallow it whole as an entire system, recognize the totality of it, and embrace the totality of it, rather than getting too caught up on a laundry list of features that you're going to choose one by one by one.
Absolutely.
Anything you would add, Chris?
I think this idea of if you ask people what they wanted, they'd say, I want a faster horse kind of idea. They almost don't know all the parts and pieces and features because they haven't had them. They're not sitting down saying, I'm not going to use a payment processing feature because I chose to not want it. They never had access to that. And so I think it's really hard for someone to sit down and say, what's the most beneficial part of this? You really need to start biting them off bit by bit by bit. The other thing I think about is not all features are understood by all teams. And when I say that, I mean the accounting team might have a say in certain features that no one else in the company really realizes. The purchasing team might have a certain say in features or things that they want to make sure they invoke. You can't let the accounting person validate what the purchasing person needs. And so what you actually need are champions within departments. Now, if somebody carries multiple hats, they sit in accounting and purchasing, let's say, then they have to vouch for both of those things. The other side is, how do you do dispute resolution?
If I can just touch on that, kind of what you just said goes back to the evaluation process also. You've got to have representation from the different areas of the business on this task force that I referenced in order to make a good decision, because it might be a phenomenal sales tool, but it is horrible at project management and service management or accounting integration or inventory management or what have you. So if you don't have representation from all the different departments, you can't have buy-in, which is critical.
The other question would be, and we kind of have danced around it a little bit, is this idea about evolving our individual business processes or method to align into that software tool. And I want to hit on it again because I think it's really important. We should be doing payment integration. Why would we not be doing that? Great. Well, what do I need to change in my business to make that happen? Not how do I fight this thing and ask for it to be different than it is. And that, I think, is this really interesting thing. So when you talk about, these kind of like overlooked features, I almost wonder if it's people who are like, no, we're better than that. We do it this way. And you go, well, now you're overlooking the feature because you refuse to change to accommodate it. And net, it would produce so much more in your organization if you just acquiesce to it.
And to that point, I'll speak to a specific capability within D-Tools Cloud. Thank you, Ryan, for and Bailey for a project overview dashboard that you get a project manager can look at and see everything they need to see about a project. But if they're not invoicing and accepting payments in that piece of software, then that's just kind of a void sitting right there in the middle of a gaping hole of information that's really important to that project manager and isn't visible because they chose to take that and use QuickBooks right? Or use some other piece of software for that function. So it just makes the whole solution seem not seem, but actually less useful.
The other part, and I think that I am for those that know me, highly analytical and data-driven approach. The software tool's fundamental benefit is the output of data that lets you pull levers in your business that you didn't know. Or, oh, we're sub this standard and I see it in my metric, let me go fix that. And I think if you choose not to invoke modules and or you do them wrong or you kind of half go in, what you find is that the data output that would enable you to manage that business unit doesn't exist right. It's incomplete in its data set. And so then you're operating in a deficiency. And I think when you really invoke all those kind of parts and pieces, it lets you trim and tune the machine in a different way.